Welcome back to the news from Kazakhstan. I'm Askar Sheraliyev, bringing you latest updates. These are the top stories. Public activist Yermek Narımbayev is ready to literally sew up his mouth to protest the judicial injustice. Real estate investors of Kazakhstan Engineering were arrested for rallying outside the office of the regional municipality. Yermek Narımbayev, the head of the mortgage committee Arman, is ready to sew his mouth in protest. The public activist revealed this on the 37th day of his political hunger strike in the letter passed to his wife. This way, Narımbayev will show his intention to refuse taking food and water in protest against his unjust sentence. The activist was sentenced to 4 years for insulting a judge and resisting police actions.
The imprisoned leader of the mortgage committee, Arman, Yermek Narımbayev, says he will stop drinking water in addition to his hunger strike that continues for 37 days. The activist was sentenced to 4 years for insulting a judge and resisting police actions. Narımbayev's letter was brought from the prison by his wife Zoya. I intend to switch to an absolute hunger strike by sewing my mouth to demonstrate that I cannot consume food. This will prove my determination to fight for fair justice and the resistance against the lawlessness of Nazarbayev's rule. Yermek's mother, pensioner Amangildi Narımbayeva, is a history teacher at a medical school. She learned about the consequences of the dry hunger strike from her colleagues. 10 days after a person stops drinking water, his body will undergo the complete dehydration, which will be followed with death. Mother, I understand you and love you very much, but you should understand me too, as you raised me this way, and now I follow the path of the people, who I serve fully and selflessly, just as you do. The editor of the website of the Human Rights Bureau, Andrei Sviridov, calls Narımbayev's act a feat. He, however, doubts its effectiveness. The times when political prisoners were released following the death of hunger-striking prisoners have ended with Gorbachev's era. A hunger striker might risk his life placing it at stake, but the inhumane regime is actually inhuman because it doesn't care about lives others than those of the rulers. According to Zoya Narımbayeva, her husband already lost 30 kilos. He can no longer get up from the bed in the infirmary, signing a refusal to take medication. Yermek Narımbayev gave 3 days to the authorities to announce a review of the verdict and a new fair trial.
Human rights activist Vadim Kuramshin demands to institute criminal proceedings against the former leadership of the Dalinka prison. He believes the actions of the Correctional Facilities Administration led to the suicide of Maxim Kozhanov, who filmed the alleged beating of another inmate, Evgeny Karaush. On Tuesday, Kuramshin made his statement next to the building of the regional court. In response, the regional prosecutor called the action of the human rights activists as court pressure.
At an improvised press conference on Tuesday, Vadim Kuramshin called to bring to accountability the former leadership of the Karaganda prison AK-159/7. The human rights activist believes they are responsible for the death of Maxim Kozhanov, who filmed the alleged beating of his fellow inmates and was later found hanged in his cell. We demand to instigate criminal proceedings against Sariev and Shatayev. Their actions led to the suicide of Maxim Kozhanov. The man on the video, Evgeny Karaush, and 3 other inmates cut their stomachs open after the video was uploaded to the internet. Now they are charged with self-mutilation. Will likely see their sentences grow by additional 6 years. This is definitely a state order to show them who the boss is and to warn the others. This is a gross violation and there was no collusion by the inmates. The regional prosecutor's office sees the declaration of the defendants as a pressure on the court. The supervisor does everything to avoid the topic of Kozhanov's death and instead continues to expose the infamous video frame by frame to prove his point to the press. Looking closer, you can see that Karaush is actually smiling on the video while being beaten. The punches are very careful and they are laid by a person in a guard uniform, although he wears sports pants and no socks, and the uniform is not his size. In addition, the prosecutor claims that the uniform in question belonged to the former prison guard Darkhan Akhmetov, who landed for the video for $350. The case against Akhmetov will be reviewed by the financial police.
4 real estate investors of the company Kazakhstan Engineering were arrested on Tuesday as a result of an unsanctioned rally. The protesters came to the Almaty Regional Administration to pass their message to the president of the country, Nursultan Nazarbayev, via the local administration. This is already the 5th letter to the president sent this year. People asked the leader of the nation to intervene and facilitate the completion of their houses or return the invested money.
We will not disperse, we will remind ourselves. The defrauded real estate investors of the Kazakhstan Engineering are asking for the assistance from the government and the president of the country. The letter addressed to the President Nazarbayev was brought to the Almaty Regional Governor's office. Instead of support, the people were met by the police. 4 action participants were detained and taken to the police station. We want to reach to the head of state because his orders and decisions are not fulfilled or misinterpreted in the regions. All the detainees were released a half an hour later. The investors asked for the clarification of the law, but the representatives of the supervisory body refused to follow the legal procedure. Please understand that we have a different supervisory authority that deals with rallies and explains all related laws, whereas I am an ordinary prosecutor on duty. I cannot clarify anything as I am in charge of a different area. 2 hours later, the protesters regrouped outside the building of Zhetesu Kurlis. This construction company was authorized by the administration of the Almaty region to complete the construction of the problematic objects. This is where the meeting with the Deputy Governor Bulat Takenov was supposed to take place. Do you think that you can do whatever you want if you are the press? We hold a working meeting here discussing issues of the housing association and other related questions. The defrauded clients of Kazakhstan Engineering once again believed the promises of the officials by agreeing to discuss the sensitive matter without the presence of the press. People still hope the housewarming is about to happen.
The trial against the sellers of uranium tablets is underway in Pavlodar. The defendants are 5 citizens of Kazakhstan who tried to sell a half a kilo of raw nuclear materials for $80,000.
The criminals were caught in the act. The national security agents placed an ad in the newspaper about buying rare metals, and the traders called in a week. The investigation lasted for 7 months but failed to determine where exactly the radioactive goods were produced. According to experts, materials is actually the spent fuel of nuclear power plants, which means that the uranium pellets spent a few years in a nuclear reactor. It is possible the tablets could be purchased to make explosives. The suspect explained that the uranium pellets were allegedly brought by his friend back in 2004, which means they were stored for many years in the barn.
Kazakhstan's farmers found themselves without the support of the authorities as the state cut the purchase of grain from domestic producers by almost 50%. The Food Corporation is ready to purchase only 970,000 tons of grain this year, instead of the planned 2 million. The information was revealed at a press conference in Astana by the head of the national holding Kazagro.
The approved sales policy also envisioned the worst scenario, which has actually happened. The situation would have been different had there been a rain in early August or late July. The optimal volume provides for any, even the most extreme options. According to Asaljan Mamutbekov, this is a desperate measure justified due to the growing wheat prices. The Food Corporation is planning to supply the local market with wheat at the cost of $180 per ton, which will keep the flour and bread prices stable and prevent the price frenzy. At the same time, the head of the national holding failed to clarify the future fate of the country's farmers, who were seemingly left to the mercy of fate.
Coal, buckwheat and soap are the components of another Kazakh humanitarian aid cargo for Kyrgyzstan sent by the Emergencies Ministry. According to the committee chairman of the ministry, Askar Sadu, the neighboring country will also receive construction materials and fittings from the state reserves in addition to food and fuel. At the same time, Kazakh MPs do not support this generous gesture, as their own country could soon face the deficit of buckwheat and vegetable oil.
Kazakh Emergencies Ministry has dispatched another strategic humanitarian aid cargo of buckwheat and coal to Kyrgyzstan. A special commission has already distributed the load between the Osh and Jalalabad regions. The ministry not just sent the cargo, but it also tries to monitor it until the goods reach the addressees. The noble gesture of the Kazakh authorities was praised by the Kyrgyz oppositionist Felix Kulov. The leader of the party Arnamys came to Kazakhstan with a specific goal to enlist the support of Nursultan Nazarbayev. In his turn, the president promised to help rebuild the south of Kyrgyzstan and open 2 additional checkpoints. I'm really grateful to you for finding the time for these consultations with politicians and political parties who really felt the support of the brotherly Kazakhstan following the tragedies in our country. At the same time, Kazakh authorities intend to introduce a temporary ban on the export of buckwheat and vegetable oil as the government fears the deficit of these goods. In addition, Kazakhstan has greatly reduced the purchase of grain from farmers. In this light, MP Kamal Burkhanov sees the aid to Kyrgyzstan as unfounded, saying that the measure only creates dependency. They have to start working a lot. There's no other way, as no one is going to just feed them without an end. The parliamentarian says that the humanitarian aid for the neighboring Kyrgyzstan should be balanced, as the domestic cabinet will not be able to feed the entire 5 million nation. Nevertheless, Kazakh authorities plan to spend more than $11 million on the aid until the end of this year.
Russian President Dmitry Medvedev signed a decree firing the powerful mayor of Moscow, Yuri Lushkov. Just 2 days ago, the long-standing city administrator claimed he had no intentions of leaving his post and even voiced future work plans, which extended far beyond the Russian capital and as far as the countries of the Central Asian region. The Kremlin, however, decided otherwise.
The echo from the resignation of Yuri Lushkov has reached Kazakhstan. In the last 18 years, the financial interests of the Moscow's administration extended far beyond the boundaries of the Russian capital. In particular, the business center Moscow Park was raised in Astana, and the construction of an entire neighborhood called Moscow was also in the plans. Lushkov's idea to move Siberian rivers to Central Asia also found support in Kazakhstan, vocally expressed by President Nursultan Nazarbayev. In October, Yuri Lushkov had a scheduled working visit to Kazakhstan to speak at the Global Forum of Spiritual Culture. This trip is now cancelled, while the duties of Moscow's administrator were temporarily given to the first vice mayor, Vladimir Rezin. In the best-case scenario, Lushkov and his family will leave without criminal cases instigated against them, but even then they will not feel very comfortable in Moscow. Hence, the vast fortunes of the Lushkov's wife Baturina and her empire will be invested even more actively outside Russia, with Kazakhstan being the second-best such location after the Ukraine.
Interestingly, Kazakh citizens more likely to take part in the political life of the country are more prone to persecution. A student of the Kazakh National University and activist of the public association Talmas Rinat Kabraev was recently expelled, likely due to his civil stand. The student is a frequent participant of various protest actions. Find out more from the next report.
A third-year law student of the Kazakh State University is suing his alma mater. Rinat Kabraev accuses the campus leadership of violating his constitutional rights. For 3 years, Kabraev held a state grant to study in the University Kaynar. This year, he decided to transfer to the leading school of the country, and the move was approved by the institution's vice-rector Murat Orunxanov. After studying at the Kazakh State University for a few days, I was informed that there was a mistake and the admissions committee had no right to accept me. The chairman of the public association, Talmas Aynur Kurmanov, believes the true reason for Kabraev's expulsion is his active civil stance, as the student is a frequent participant of various protest actions. The truth is, he didn't violate any laws of the country, and he never called other students to participate in any actions that would lead to riots or anything that could endanger this community system or order. We consider the refusal to clear his transfer as another form of repression. The head of the university's curricular department, Gulnazia Zhakupova, strongly disagrees with the accusations, saying all of the claims are improper. This person is not a part of our student body. It is impossible that Orunxanov declined the permission to study to a student. In my opinion, he is not telling the truth. This is simply impossible. It is now the matter of the district court to define whether Kabraev is a student of the Kazakh State University. The activist is supported by the coalition of NGOs and independent trade unions. The association Talmas now intends to set up independent student unions across the country, believing that united people will have a better chance of fighting for their rights.